is God, the mighty God, the great King over all the gods.
The genius of mendicancy. What Francis discovers, and we are told through the operation of the Holy Spirit, he understands this. Through these dreams, that need or poverty or insufficiency, whatever we want to call it, does not need to lead to isolation or discouragement, but rather, with frank acknowledgement and humility, leads to interdependence, the discovery of gifts, the receiving of generosity in the form of alms or care. This genius of mendicancy is the great inspiration that Francis receives. If we talk about a model, as Larry spoke about these models of payment, of reward, of recognizing accomplishment, we may say that Francis, through these dreams of insufficiency, points out to us what we might call a counterintuitive economy. He is not able to provide for the needs either of himself or his brothers. He must then be mendicant. He must discover his brother's needs and set out to fulfill them by asking, as he says in the earlier rule, chapter 9. For themselves, because they were insufficient to supply their own needs. They provoke a response from others. A response that I would call the generosity response.
And that is the massive and unjust suffering that marks our human community. The majority of the world's people are poor. And as Ignacio Ellacuría reminded us when he was alive, the poor are being crucified on a scale that boggles the mind, a scale that overwhelms and paralyzes, that's global, systemic, ongoing. I don't know how to handle that at what may be the sign of the times today. It seems inadequate to me to fold that reality of the poor into, make it into one bullet point among others. So I simply leave it as a kind of a prophetic challenge to keep in mind in every response we contemplate, confident that you all, the sons of St. Francis, have far more insight and experience to offer here than I. Thank you very much.
Say that this is the bittersweet part of our history, that we need to adapt and change, and every time that we do, there are probably brothers who are going to feel alienated, who are going to feel pushed away because of the necessary changes that we must implement for the good of the fraternity itself. These things are not easy. The mere fact that something is popular or widespread does not make it valuable or appropriate necessarily to the form of life based on the gospel. And this is the great conflict of conscience in the chapters at the beginning of the fraternity. And I would say it's the conflict that we experience whenever the friars gather in chapter. Listening to the word of the Lord, observing the signs around us, and then adapting our life to respond. Francis and the great theologians of our tradition have always wanted to locate the sacred in the ordinary as what is to be discovered, as Francis says, the body of the Lord under the little form of bread. The majesty of the glory of God discovered in the seemingly trivial.
Joachim, in his ministry, certainly began to internationalize the order, and he did a great deal to help with putting ourselves together with our Franciscan roots in Franciscan discipleship, and being sure that our young people and ourselves in ongoing formation were always very attentive to being first and foremost friars rooted in Francis and in Clare. That has continued in these days under the leadership of our brother Marco as we continue to look at our community in a larger and a grander scope. The Congress in India of a few years ago made us tremendously aware of how multicultural our community is. This coming in a few weeks we have the Congress in Nairobi, which will explore further our interculturality and our solidarity as brothers across the globe.
Always a deeper, prayerful pondering of the entire gospel is handed on to us by the Church, and in particular, with Bill Short's help, but we could only have him around forever, a very particular pondering, prayerful pondering of the gospel in the minor key, our charism.
Jesus answered him, "Unless I wash you, you will have no inheritance with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Master, then not only my feet, but my hands and head as well?" Jesus said to him, "Whoever has bathed has no need except to have his feet washed, for he is clean all over. So you are clean, but not all."
The last example, by contrast, I take from the Gospel of John, and more specifically from the final section the scholars call the Book of Glory. This glory is the glory of Jesus. In order to manifest itself to the world, this glory must pass through the suffering of betrayal, of the passion, and of death on the cross. The immediate context is the Last Supper, a context of great intimacy in which Jesus gives himself to his own in the breaking of the bread and sharing of the wine, which will remain as eternal signs of his living presence. The act of the Eucharist is preceded and accompanied by the act of washing feet, an act that represents the highest teaching of Jesus on mutual service that Jesus leaves to his followers. The greatness of Mary is that she stays with Jesus. She accepts a divine plan difficult to understand. For this she is blessed, not for having given birth to the Son of God, but for having faith in it. Here is her lesson: to live fraternity, to stay with Jesus, even in moments of great pain, discomfort, or when all seems lost. Faith is always the key. Only with faith can one accept everything. And Mary teaches us this.